And we are live. Welcome, Brett Johnson, the original Internet Godfather. That's your title, right?
Well, that's what they say.
And I love
But
the
they
hat.
say a lot, you know.
Well, who's they and why are they
Yeah,
saying that?
exactly. I mean, the United States Secret Service, they did label me the original Internet Godfather. That was the title they gave me, and that's the title I go by now. I figure that I paid for it, I may as well use it. So how did I get that title? Well, 39 felonies. 39 felonies. I was placed on the United States Most Wanted list. I was sent to prison. I escaped from prison. And I guess not only all that, but the big claim of notoriety is I built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called ShadowCrew. It was a precursor to today's darknet and darknet markets, laid the foundation for the way modern cybercrime channels operate today. The 39 felonies, well, they had to do with refining modern financial cybercrime as we know it. So you take credit card theft, account takeovers, phishing schemes, malware deployment, synthetic fraud, I mean, you name it. Stimulus fraud. We were doing some stuff with Katrina back in the day and stuff like that. And so you name it. I was on the ground floor of developing a lot of that, and it's absolutely nothing to be proud of. And of course, that will land you in prison.
That's the bottom line. But before we get started, a lot of time you touch upon your past, the upbringing that brought you into this kind of life of crime. Why don't we just dive a little bit into that, because I think it's has kind of a paramount implications to people that are raising their kids a certain way. Maybe just give us a quick brief overview of what was it like to
Sure, and
grow up.
let me take the hat off because it's it's going to get a
I
little
love it.
serious.
We should have done one with like you hand it over to me and I wear it,
Yeah,
like throw
exactly.
everybody off. Well, we'll do that next time.
So my childhood, when I'm talking about in presentations, I always start out that saying that I committed crime when I was 10 years old, and that's true, but it doesn't really paint a full picture of what my childhood was. I posted on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago about one of my first memories. I've got two main primary memories in my life as first memories. The first memory is very clear. We were in Fort Lewis, Washington. My father was a captain in the military. My mom was a military wife. I was probably 4, my sister Denise 3, and we were on base driving. Me and my sister in the back seat of the car, my mom and dad in the front seat. Dad's driving, mom's in the passenger seat, screaming, just angry, screaming. And I don't remember what they were arguing about, but I remember at one point my mom dives across the car, grabs the steering wheel, screams, "Are you ready to die, you son of a bitch," at my father, and tries to wreck us. That's one of the first memories I've got is that. Another one is, and the other one I thought was a false memory for years. I mean, for years I thought it was a false memory. But I remember my mom had a one. We lived in Eastern Kentucky, and in a neighborhood. So Eastern Kentucky neighborhoods are a little different, but this was kind of a neighborhood. You had houses fairly close together and everything. All the neighbors knew each other. I remember my mom in the front yard had a woman tied to a chair beating her. And I remember blood and everything else like that. And for years, I thought that was just a false memory. And after I got out of prison, a couple years after I got out of prison, this would have been probably 2012, 2013, my mom mentioned that. And that was like this big wake-up call. It's like, oh my God, it wasn't fake. I didn't just imagine that. But that's kind of the childhood I grew up in, was that type of environment. My first crimes were when I was 10 years old. I mean, that's every word the truth. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is one of these areas like the Panhandle of Florida, parts of Louisiana, parts of Texas, where if you're not fortunate enough to have a job, you may be involved in a scam, hustle, fraud, whatever you want to call it. You do what you got to do. My mom was my mom was a fraudster. Basically, she was like the captain of the entire fraud industry in that community. So no crime too big or too small. This is a woman that at one point she steals a 108,000-pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer. At another point, she takes a slip and fall in a convenience store, tries to sue the owner. We had a neighbor she used to act as a pimp for. That's mom. My dad, my dad, I tell you, man, my dad was a good man, and he is a good man. Back then, he just didn't know. He had forgotten he was a good guy. And My dad's problem is he loved my mom so much that he was scared of losing her. He was scared she was going to walk out the door. So he becomes this enabler in the family. So if she had an idea to commit a crime, boy, he'd co-sign on to that. If she wanted to abuse somebody, he wouldn't step in the way. And she was abusive. I mean, she was. I kind of make lighthearted jokes of her being physical, that her heart wasn't in it, but yeah, she was physical. I remember the last time that she touched either me or Denise. I guess we were 10 or 11, and she was beating Denise with a belt buckle, and Denise kicked her through a closet at that point. And Denise stood up and told her, "You'll never touch us again." And that was the last time Mom touched us. But Mom's heart wasn't in the physical; it was more in the emotional, the verbal, and the mental stuff. So she used to bring men home in front of my dad. My dad would sit there and cry and beg her not to do it. Mom would do it anyway. And finally, she leaves the man. I was 10. My sister Denise was 9. We were in Panama City, Florida at that point in time. We moved from Panama City back to Hazard, Kentucky, right in the heart of the coal fields, eastern Kentucky. And Mom kept up those partying ways. She would, sometimes she'd take us with her, leave us in the car. Sometimes we'd wait in the living room. Most of the time, she just left us at the house. So my first crime, we'd been at home for a few days. And I get the worst parts from Mom and Dad. I get the criminal mindset from Mom. From Dad, I get that fear of being abandoned, the people that I love leaving. So we'd been at home for a few days, me and Denise, no food in the house. I'm the kid that would pop outside, see if Mom was driving down the street, post up at the window looking outside, Denise was just angry, 9 years old, just angry all the time. And so one day we didn't have any food. Denise walks in the house. She's got this pack of pork chops in her hand. And I'm like, "Where'd you get that?" And she's like, "I stole it." And I'm like, "Show me how you did that." So she takes me over and she shows me how she's stealing food. And I'm like, "Best idea ever. Let's do that." So we start stealing food. And what happens is Denise is stuffing the food down her pants. And that's how we're getting out with all the food and everything. Well, we want a sandwich. You can't stuff a loaf of bread down your pants. So there's a Kmart across the way. I tell Denise, "Let me see what I can do." And I walk in and take all the tags off a hoodie, put the hoodie on and wear it out. So what you can do is you can put the loaf of bread down the sleeve of the hoodie and, just kind of throw it over your shoulder and walk out with bread like that. So that's how we started to steal clothes. Well, it becomes like this perverted form of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Kmart's got toys, books, games, music, everything else. We start stealing that. Mom comes home, sees all the stolen loot, sees the television, sees everything that's in the house. Where'd this come from? I'm the kid that stands up 10 years old. "Oh, we found it." She's like, "No, you didn't find that." Denise stands up. Denise doesn't lie about it at all. Denise stands up. She's half proud, half pissed off. "We stole it." My mom looks at my sister. "Show me how you did that." And she joins us, man. Not only does she join us, but she goes to get her mother to join us as well. We become this intergenerational shoplifting ring in Eastern Kentucky.
That
You take these road. Do what?
incredible story. And so this is kind of the nature versus nurture type of thing, right? Where
It is.
you are. Listen, I listen to you, and you're like a super sharp guy.
Thank you.
Like you are. So you grew up in an environment that was abusive, and then you were shown the way that wasn't the right way, right? Obviously, and you kind of took that and went with it.
I'll tell you the difference.
Okay.
And it's something my sister said. I had this Anglerfish podcast. I ended that. I'm going to launch a new show in January. But the first couple of episodes of Anglerfish, I had Denise in, and we were talking about our childhood. And she makes a statement. And she says that as a child, she was always waiting on someone to come and save her. And my response to her was, I knew no one ever would. And honestly, David, if looking back at it now, I think that's the path where our path, that's the point where our paths diverged at that point. Denise really always expected someone to come in and save her. And I think that's what causes the anger even in her life today. Compared to me, I was like, nope, nobody's coming. If you're going to take care of yourself, you need to do it yourself. And I think that's not an excuse. I want you to understand that's not an excuse. As an adult, I don't care what kind of childhood you've got. As an adult, you choose to victimize others. I chose to break the law. I chose to bring harm to other people and companies and things like that. As a child, though, you can't help that. You're going to do whatever the adults in your environment are telling you or directing you or wanting you to do. But certainly as an adult, I actively chose to commit crime.
So, since you know that path, what would you recommend to parents that are raising kids today? How would they, how would they combat this type of behavior, and what can they do to make sure that the kids are taking the right path?
I mean, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, so I've got a 17-year-old stepson, and my sister's got her daughter is, I think her daughter's 16 right now. And they are both problematic. They really are. And a lot of it is due to the access of the internet and cell phones and stuff like that. So my youngest stepson, his mom wants to get him a cell phone when he's, I think, 13. And I was adamantly against it. I was like, absolutely not. A child doesn't need his phone like that. Absolutely not. Looking where I come from, I mean, the stuff he can do with it, the trouble he can get into.
It's not just the phone, it's the content, right? I mean,
it's the content. It's absolutely the content. So since that point, I mean, it's been a complete nightmare. Right? Like right now, the young man doesn't have a phone. And the reason he doesn't have a phone, it progressively got worse. He would, of course, we caught him watching porn as a young kid, took the phone away for several months. Then he starts almost bullying these girls online. At that point, I physically smashed his phone in front of him. It was several more months until he got another phone back, at which point I made him work the money out to buy his own phone, figuring that would, instill some sort of responsibility in him. And then he starts, we live in a house where, all the bedrooms are upstairs. He starts in the middle of night, everyone home, sneaking girls in until we find out about it. And that caused him to lose every electronic device he's got. He lost his car, lost everything else through the roof. Now, and I don't think that that's a unique situation with today's parents. I think parents have a lot of problems because of the internet and the content that's on there and the ability to communicate and get yourself in trouble and everything else, and the peer pressure that's online as well, with Instagram and things like that. I think that's a real problem that parents face. What I would say, and I'm still learning this as well myself, what I would say is that if you're going to allow your child online, if you're going to get your child that cell phone, make sure that you not only have the monitoring software on that, but that you also pay attention to the monitoring software. At one point, my youngest stepson, the one that's in trouble right now, we took his cell phone. He talks a kid at school into give him another cell phone. And we didn't find out about that for a month. So you have to be really aware of every single thing that's going on in your environment where your kid's concerned. I mean, it's really our job, and I'm adamant about this. I want to be friends with the kids. I truly do. But our job is to be a parent. And being a parent to me means making sure, doing the best job that you possibly can to raise them to be a decent human being. That's what I think our job is. And I'm serious about that. I never had kids myself. And the problem with that, I think I was always scared that I would turn out like my mom at that point. Denise has her child, and she's a very bright child, but she really goes off the deep end on a lot of this stuff as well.
Yeah. And we, despite what we think, I mean, we end up a lot like our parents. It seems like
we do. I was talking to a counselor, and the counselor said, we were talking about this, and the counselor said, as long you're going to mess up along the way, and that's what I tell any parent out there. You're going to mess up along the way. You're going to get a lot of stuff wrong. You're going to get a lot of stuff right. But at the end of the day, as long as every action that you do is with a sense of love behind it, you're not going to go too far off base. You're going to be all right. And I fully believe that. My youngest stepson, I won't say his name, but he's had a lot of difficulties, but I do see improvement in him as time goes along. I really am confident that he'll turn out to be a really decent human being. It's just this journey that he's got to go through to get to that point. And I think that's what I would say to most parents out there is, just do anything that you do it in love. Never react out of anger. If they've really done something that makes you mad, take a breath, step away, never do anything out of anger. Come back once you're calmed down and have that discussion. And I'm really big about discussing things. I don't think that you react or enact any type of punishment or consequence without really fully discussing it with your child, and pay attention to what they're doing. I mean, always know what they're doing. That's my thing. Is always know what they're doing.
Almost sounds trivial, right? But it's not.
It does.
It's
but I mean, it's true.
It is true. And then leading by example. I mean, what are you doing today? You know, you cross the chasm to the other side, and you're
Yeah.
like, you're helping organization, helping
I mean,
individuals.
my kids, my two stepsons that live here today, they know exactly what I did, what I have done, and what I do now. I've never hidden. I mean, I hid it from them when I first met their mom, but as years went by, as the youngest one got older, we shared that with him, and I've been
What was the
very open.
reaction? Did they think you were cool?
Oh, geez, the reaction. So,
I mean, how did you? Yeah, just sat around like, having
well,
burgers in the backyard and said, "Listen,
no, it was.
like
So I
I have
met
a
my
checkered
wife.
past."
No, I met my. I've been dating the same. I think you know the story. I've been dating the same type of women I had been dating. I got to the point at post release. I didn't want to. I didn't have any money. Couldn't get a job. Couldn't touch a computer. I had some job offers and all that, and couldn't take them. Started to try to apply for fast food. Wasn't allowed to take a fast food position because those are computers at the cashier stations.
No way. Hold on
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
second. Let
You
me
can't
just
touch. You
digest
can't
that.
work fast food.
That is incredible. Well,
Yeah,
there's computers and everything. I guess even
exactly,
construction has.
exactly,
So you're basically
exactly.
banned for
Right. So then
anything.
I'm here, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what about a waiter's position? Well, no, that's credit cards and computers, idiot. So I couldn't get a job. And so I was bumming money from my dad and my sister. I was on food stamps. I had a roommate that was taking care of half the rent. And I got to the point where I had enough money to feed my cat, and I didn't have enough money to buy toilet paper for the apartment. And so I didn't want to go into
Well,
internet fraud.
good thing the cat did not need
Yeah.
toilet paper.
Yeah, so I went and got the cat. I went to the dollar store, bought the cat some food. On the way out, they had a kiosk right at the door that had some toilet paper on it, and that's the first crime I committed when I got out. Took about a year and a half to get to that point. And my wife now, Michelle, she ended up finding me about that same point. I moved in with her within 2 months, didn't get married, finally got a job. The only job I could get was landscaping,
Did
pushing a lawnmower 10 hours
Brett,
a week.
did you ever think about, when you struggle like that, right? And you have mad skills, obviously,
Right.
in kind of the dark side of the house. Did you ever think about like potentially going back and
The
doing,
closest I've ever came, the closest I ever came was March of last year, pre-pandemic, right as the pandemic was hitting. Because right now, I'm a legal guy these days. I work with top companies. I work with law enforcement. I do all this work, and I'm very proud of the work that I do. But as that was coming in, I knew they were going to cancel the consulting gigs I had. I knew the conventions and the speaking engagements were going to be canceled as well. And I brought the family in and I told them, I was like, hey, the way this story ends is with Brett Johnson back breaking the law. And I go to prison for 20 years because I do have those skills. I mean, I can steal money very easily. And it was fortunate that that's the first time in my life that I've ever voiced a concern like that I've ever spoken it out loud. Usually I'm the guy that internalizes it, keeps it quiet, and I go out and do what I need to do. But I not only told my family about that, I've got FBI contacts. I said the exact same thing to them. Anybody that I did a podcast with, all the businesses that I work with and everything, I told every single person that would talk to me the problems that I was having. And a funny thing happened. I mean, I had these people that reached out and they took me under their wing. The FBI, the FBI friends of mine, they would call and about every 3 weeks. How you doing over there, Brett? Let's
no
have
way.
lunch. Yeah, yeah.
You gotta
And
be kidding me. That is
yeah,
incredible story.
it was crazy. It was everybody just
So you
the
asked for
guy that
help
used. I asked for help
and you got it.
without saying it, and people they manned up and they helped me see through it. And today I refer to myself kind of offhandedly as the only fraudster to go broke during the pandemic, which is true, but I'm damn proud of that, man. I am. I'm damn proud of that. So, it's
Yeah,
it's just this crazy thing. It's like it really is this journey that I've been through is this crazy thing, but I really am. I lead a life that I don't deserve these days, but I'm damn grateful to have it. I truly am.
yeah, that's very impactful, I think. So how did you cross, so you're doing like, all these like kind of fraudulent activity like early days, and then
Right.
it was just in the early days of the internet. So what was kind of the first, kind of cyber type of how did that go?
Well, you got to figure, like I said, I grew up, my mom was a fraudster. My sister, other than that shoplifting stuff, she doesn't break the law anymore. But me, I just kept on going. And not only my mom, but that whole side of the family were fraudsters. So I grew up knowing how to grow pot, how to commit charity fraud, insurance fraud, faking accidents, faking stolen cars, burglaries, trafficking drugs. I did all that stuff as a child until branched off on my own with internet crime. And what happens is I fake a car accident, get the money to get married, and we moved from me and my wife moved from Hazard, Kentucky, up to Lexington, Kentucky, to go to UK. I was majoring in English, lit, and theater at the time, and my wife was majoring in music performance. And I'm the guy again. I told my wife, I was like, don't worry about doing anything. You just go to school. No, I'll do the work. I get a job. You don't have to work or anything. Don't worry about the cooking and cleaning. You just concentrate on school. So here, idiot Brett is. 50-hour-week job, 18-hour class load, all the cooking, all the cleaning, something had to give. What gave was the job. Got to eat at the end of the day. And then one day, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was doing little bitty frauds around the physical frauds around Lexington, charity fraud and stuff like that. One day I find eBay, and I liked eBay. I liked eBay a lot. I mean, it was right after it was right as they were transitioning past the Pez sales and they were getting into the auction arena and everything. And eBay was wide open. I mean, you could look at everyone's
back in the day, it was just starting out. Yeah.
So I knew there was a way to make money on eBay. Didn't really know how until Bill O'Reilly. He's got Inside Edition. He used to host it back then. And they're talking about Beanie Babies. And the one they're profiling is Peanut the Royal Blue Elephant, selling for $1,500 on eBay. I'm sitting there watching it like, shit, I need to get me a peanut. So the next day, skip class, figure I could probably find one. Maybe there's one in a bin at a Hallmark store. Well, no, idiot. They're all on eBay for $1,500. Find that out after, 3-4 hours of driving around Lexington, Kentucky. What I've noticed, though, is they had these little gray Beanie Baby elephants for $8. So I'm sitting there like, buy a gray Beanie Baby elephant for $8. Stop by Kroger on the way home, pick up a pack of blue Rit dye, go home, try to dye the little guy. Turns out they're made out of polyester, don't hold dye very well, look like they've got the mange when you get them out of the bath. But the thing is I ripped a lady off of $1,500. I found a picture of a real one online, posted that picture on eBay. She thought I had the real thing. She wins the bid. And this is where this social engineering kicks in. And what you find out is that a lot of experienced criminals, they become social engineers as children in order to survive the environment. And then when they become adults, they use that skill, that tool, to commit fraud and crime. Well, here I am. My social engineering skills kick in immediately. She wins the bid. I send her a message to put her on the defensive instead of me. And my message was, hey, never done any business with you. I don't even know if I can trust you. What I need you to do is go down to the U.S. Postal Service, get me a postal money order issued by the United States government, protects us both. Send that to me. Once I get that, I'll send you the animal. That way we're all protected. She believes that. She sends me a U.S. Postal money order. I cash it out, send her this animal through the mail, immediately get a phone call. This is not what I ordered. My response, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. I sent you a blue-ish elephant. And the weird thing is, now that's the first crime I committed, but that's also the first lesson of cybercrime. And that lesson is, if you delay a victim, if you just keep putting them off, a lot of them, they get so exasperated, they throw their hands in the air, walk away, and you don't hear from them again. Yeah, they give up, and they don't complain to law enforcement. And that's really...
companies do that as well with like some fees.
Do that as well.
With some extra fees, ancillary fees. They know that some people are going to give up.
You take some of these large corporations that have internal fraudsters or even external fraudsters hitting them. They'll know who it is, especially if it's internal. They'll identify the employee, and instead of prosecuting, they'll give them a nice severance package, make them sign an NDA, and they send them on their way, is what they do. And, I guess there's some benefit for that, but from a criminal point of view, it tells you you've gotten away with the crime. If you don't face any consequence, if you're never prosecuted, you get away with that crime, and it reinforces that, hey, crime pays. And for a lot of people, it does.
These folks, some of them go and they join a new company and do the same.
The same thing over and over.
Same thing over and over again. That it definitely, it has some sort of reward mechanism that
absolutely does.
And so you moved on, from that to bigger, better things.
Yeah, well, I don't
because
know if it's bigger. It's certainly bigger, but better. Let's be honest. I mean, it was a lot of crime committed. I that was the first online crime I committed, and I got away with it. So I kept going, and as I kept going, I got better at it, at understanding the dynamics of online fraud. I get to the point where I'm selling pirated software. Pirated software leads into installing mod chips into first gaming systems so you can play pirated games, then installing those mod chips into cable television boxes so you can watch pay per view. Finally, programming satellite DSS cards, those
but Brett,
18-inch RCA
this is
systems.
it's so cool because at the time I don't even think there was. How would you even find out about all this stuff? I mean, it's today you have YouTube, right? So there's a lot of YouTube
Right.
content. You go in
Yeah,
and like what are
today
you
you
talking?
can look all that up.
Yeah, but back then, Brett, like it wasn't trivial. Like you
No,
had the ability to go out there and uncover all that in a very early stage of the internet, where all those
I
things were,
am that's one of these skill sets that a lot of people today don't have because it's hand fed to them. Back then, the criminals that were around, we had to learn every single dynamic of these crimes. And that includes how to research these crimes, how to find who's committing them, who to network with, and everything else like that. And that was one of these things. So, I'm committing eBay fraud, which is basically claiming I've got cameras that I don't have, or, beanie baby elephants or something like that. And I keep progressing and wanting to do more until finally you're starting to deal in pirated software, then finally mod chips. And what happens is you keep looking and you keep asking questions, and you're in forums, you notice someone say something. So you reach out to that person. Hey, what was this about a CD-ROM that pirated copy of what? So you can do that. Are they? And then you find out. Well, you've got burned and you've got pressed. Well, you start out burning your own copies, and then finally you get a connection in Hong Kong, and you start ordering pressed copies, and you start selling those, and it starts like that. And then that same connection, they're talking about. Well, you start out with the gaming systems. If you're selling pirated gaming systems or gaming software, you have to have a mod chip in a lot of those systems, like Sega Saturn. You had to have a mod chip in that, or PlayStation 1.
yeah.
So you
Did you
find a
ever,
connection that's got
Brett?
that.
Did you ever get defrauded like on a reverse, like when you dealt with someone? Because I'm
Often.
assuming because these folks are not. They're like you. They're about they're looking to make some money, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
did you get it?
being scammed was very common. But here's the thing about that. I mean, it's very common. To
Yeah,
this
yeah,
day, it's very common.
yeah.
But the thing about it is I think fraudsters have a different mindset. An experienced criminal has a different mindset about that. We view that as the price of doing business, is
Mhm.
what you do. All right. Now, ShadowCrew, the interesting thing about ShadowCrew is ShadowCrew attempts to solve that problem, that trust problem. All right. So if you look at organized cybercrime, ShadowCrew, before ShadowCrew comes into being, the only real avenue you had was an IRC chat session, this internet relay chat, rolling chat board. You didn't know who to trust, who to believe, if someone had something they claimed to sell, if they had it, if it worked, or if they were just going to rip you off. So there was a lot of scams going around because everyone there was a criminal looking
Mhm.
to profit. All right. ShadowCrew, what ShadowCrew attempted to do, and to a large part it did, was provide a trust mechanism for criminals to use. Now you had a forum type channel where you could reference conversations days, weeks, months old. You could learn from them. You could ask questions. You knew by looking at someone's screen name what the skill level of that person was. If you could learn from the person, network with the person, we had vouching systems in place, review systems, escrow systems, all with the goal of establishing trust between criminals, which becomes very important if you understand how online crime operates. So there are three necessities to successfully committing online crime. It's gathering the data, committing the crime, and then cashing out. All three things have to work in conjunction. The problem with online fraud or cybercrime as a whole is that one criminal can't do all three things. He can do one thing, sometimes two, but three, not going to happen usually. So in order for those necessities to work, you have to be able to trust your criminal associates. So ShadowCrew kind of laid the platform for that. And that's really what you see today with dark web marketplaces and the forums that are around and stuff like that with Dread, Telegram, stuff like that, is you see that trust mechanism still in place the way it was formed with ShadowCrew back in, hell, this was 2004.
Yeah, that's incredible. That trust network
Right.
to facilitate kind of the dark web sort of thing. And there are companies out there that claim that they have presence in the dark web, so they're trying to again impersonate uh, people of
Right.
trust and then get connected to these to these groups. How successful do these guys are? Because some of the services they sell, or at least claim that they have quite the capabilities, but I'm just wondering if that's even possible to really get infiltrated into these networks.
It's interesting. So I was asked this. I did 3 presentations yesterday, so I'm a little hoarse today. But I was asked yesterday during an AARP session about dark web monitoring for individuals. And the answer is that's completely worthless. It truly is. I mean, everyone's information is already available. The information that is on the dark web or on a channel that criminals use is information that's being sold. So it's behind a paywall. So you're not going to find specific PII usually unless it's posted out there as a demo or as someone has already used it to death and they're just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and by the way, even if the information is not in the dark web behind a paywall, I mean, there's a lot of
It's
information
still
out there,
available.
It's in the open open source.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
everything
people
is
don't
available.
realize that.
Mhm,
People
mhm.
don't realize that TransUnion has TLO, which if you've got a TLO subscription, you can pull up, an in-depth background check. Answer any security questions you want to with the TLO report. Well, criminals have access to that too. They sell it for $25 a lookup right now. So everyone's information is available. It's readily available. For companies, it's a little different. I do believe in monitoring for companies, not really specific companies, but the vertical that the company is in. Because what happens is, as you know, the good guys are not very good about sharing information with competitors, either because of regulations, privacy concerns, or competitive edges.
Mhm.
So they really internalize that. Amazon, for example, gets eaten alive back in 2013 with refund fraud. They don't tell any of their competitors about it. And what happens is the criminals, once they mine out Amazon, which is still going on today, they hit Amazon as hard as they can, then they pivot over to Apple and Microsoft and all these other people. That tends to be the way it is with most companies. They really don't share a lot of information or collaborate with
Yeah,
their competitors. And because of that, it opens things up. But if you're looking at your vertical that your company's in, and you see the type of fraud that's happening with somebody else, whatever the criminal chatter is with that competitor, you can anticipate that, hey, we're going to see this at some point in time. So I do believe in that. Now, what type of access do these companies have? It's questionable. It's very questionable because let's be honest, you're not a criminal. Okay, you're not. Now you can monitor some stuff. You can see what the chatter is and everything else, but unless you're embedded in that type of community, unless you understand the dynamics of that specific community, a lot of the time the chatter that you're going to get is absolutely useless. You have people on there that embellish, they brag. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not.
yeah,
Um,
and we're US centric. You need somebody who lives sometimes overseas in different
you
countries,
absolutely do.
with different culture, different
You absolutely
customs.
do.
This
There's
this
nothing.
Yeah.
I'm doing. A reporter's talking to me right now about some medical record compromises that are going on, and the question is where do we buy? Where do criminals buy stolen medical data? Well, it's usually not on U.S. forums or U.S. marketplaces. It's usually some Russian marketplace out there that's got that, which means all of a sudden that not only do you need to be able to speak Russian fluently, but you need to be able to be trusted within those communities. Because if you're an outsider coming in, you're probably not going to get much information at all from the people inside of that. So you've got dark web scrapers that scrape the data, stuff like that. But it's very questionable about the group. Now I have worked with some of the services that are out there. I won't say their names about how you build legends within those communities. Those fake profiles where you can go in and actually embed yourself, and how long it takes to do that, and how you can establish trust in those groups, things like that.
And don't you have
But it
to
takes
know how to
time.
speak Russian?
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I
You have
mean,
to know how to do that.
maybe like if you watch the series The Queen's Gambit, I mean, she learned how to speak Russian so she
Yeah,
can understand what the Russian was saying, so she can win the chess
absolutely.
tournaments. But that's quite the endeavor, right? To learn how to speak Russian, and especially with some sort of dialects that they have in different
Especially,
regions.
especially.
Um, so so aside from monitoring the dark web, what do you find is the most effective today for enterprise to protect themselves? I mean, we see a lot of ransomware these days. There's a lot of social engineers that still,
Sure.
targeted phishing and so on. So, in your perspective, from a criminal mindset,
Mhm.
what can they do to protect themselves?
There's a couple things that companies need to really understand. First is that dynamic of cybercrime, how cybercriminals actually operate. It's not that the criminals are really sophisticated. The criminals are not. What is sophisticated is that platform they operate on. That platform that enables people to network together, to share and exchange information, do all these other things. It's basically, from a criminal point of view, a lot of the time it's plug and play. It doesn't really matter who the criminal is. You plug them into the platform, they're going to succeed depending on who they're networking with and things like that. So understand that the platform is the sophistication, not really the criminal. We do have sophisticated criminals, but their numbers are extremely small. Okay.
Yes, and some of them are state sponsored, so not
Some of them are
necessarily.
state sponsored,
Yeah.
which brings me to, I think, what the real big takeaway is on this.
Mm-hmm.
Why do cybersecurity problems exist? And I would say that it's because 90% plus of every single attack uses known exploits. See, it's not a zero-day attack. It's not the stuff we don't know about that's causing the problem. It's the stuff we've been told about for years that we're not doing anything about.
Yes, and it's not even a top 10. Right,
no,
Brett? It can be like number 37 on the list,
yes,
right?
Yes,
Right.
But that's the thing, right? We think that you got a new company, new security company comes out. It's a very sexy company. They've got a nice, sexy product and everything else like that. The problem with cybersecurity is not sexy. It's nuts and bolts. Yeah, you can have that nice, flashy program all day long, every day, but the nuts and bolts of actually doing what you need to do. For example, you mentioned ransomware. Pre-pandemic, ransomware deployment was mostly some sort of social engineering scheme. You'd send out the email, you'd drop a thumb drive in a parking lot, which someone would always plug in, some crap like that. Because of the pandemic, though, 51% of every single ransomware deployment is brute forcing SMBs. So think about that for a second. I mean, how hard is it to do that? Well, when you take a stat like, 41% of every single router has a default password, you start to understand some of these problems all of a sudden. And they're huge issues that can be fixed, but they're not being fixed. You look at the NotPetya attack. That's a prime example of what I'm saying about these known exploits that are used, these known vulnerabilities. So NotPetya is all about that. It's the Russian sandworm group, the top hacking group on the planet. They fake a Microsoft certificate. They take over basically the QuickBooks of the Ukraine, fake that Microsoft certificate, send out this malware. It uses Eternal Blue and Eternal Romance, which were patched over a year earlier. It uses Mimikatz, another known exploit, to harvest credentials out of RAM. It looks for outward-facing SMBs. Oh, my God. Something we've preached about, well, at least the good guys have preached about for years.
Yeah,
for
decades.
years.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And you would think that those ports would be closed, 137, 38, 39, and 445. But no, millions of computers had those ports open.
Brett, I can't believe you're an English major. You talk like a true, computer science through and through. And it's a compliment. I mean, you're like, all your ports, or you're like the names of all the exploits. It's pretty remarkable, I have to say.
But you think about it, it's not. If you consider that the criminals aren't really sophisticated, and that the problem is all these known vulnerabilities, it's not rocket science. It's truly not. The only thing you need to do is buckle down and start sealing up those known vulnerabilities. I've got a 130-page printout of the SolarWinds class action lawsuit. And it just talks about these known vulnerabilities for 130 pages and how the company knew about it and they didn't do anything about it. That's like a poster child for what I'm talking about. We have to buckle down and take care of this stuff. And it's no different with companies than it is with individuals. I preach about freezing people's credit. Credit freezes have been free since 2018.
Yes.
3 years.
And by the way, after I've listened to you speak, it was a few years back. That's the first thing I did. It took me exactly 15 minutes.
It doesn't take long. And
No,
it's not really, it doesn't create a lot of friction. It's not difficult to do. And today, the percent of the U.S. population, it's 12%. 12% have credit freezes in place. One of the primary things you need to do to be secure, and only 12% of the U.S. population has it. It's insane.
Inexcusable. You can't help people. Yeah, you can't help people that don't want to help
it's
themselves.
the same thing with passwords. 80% of every single person uses the same password across multiple websites. My God. nowadays you've got, and I'm a cheapo.
They
I
almost like
use the
deserve to get.
yeah, but I'm miserly. I'm cheap. I don't want to spend a lot of money, but I use the Chrome password manager.
Uh-huh.
I'm fine with that. You don't have to even spend a lot of money to do what you need to do. So
Yeah,
it's like, come
and
on,
two
guys.
factor. Like just download whatever the available like MFA
Exactly.
tool out there.
Exactly. Just do what you need to do.
So in actuality, for these enterprise and companies to go out and start patching and start like looking at what what's open to minimize their risk. Like in actuality, how would you go about it? Like what would be like the first thing you need to do in order for you to see if you have any known vulnerabilities in your network?
I
What's
would do what it's basically what any criminal does. You start seeing what type of patches have been announced. The only thing a patch is a broadcast to every criminal on the planet telling them which door to knock on. So you see what patches are out there. That's first vulnerabilities, because most of the time patches aren't installed immediately. So you see about that. You read about vulnerability lists and everything else that's out there. You use back in the day it was Kali Linux. I'm not sure what they're using right now, but you use these tools that are meant to test for vulnerabilities. Is what you do. The same thing the good guys are using. It's the same thing the bad guys are using to test for these vulnerabilities. And then you start pinging away. And if you're experienced at this, you can almost anticipate what to look for. All right, you can almost anticipate it. So you can anticipate those outward facing SMBs being open. You can almost always anticipate that. So you can anticipate getting entry through someone's printer, for example. You can anticipate that. So it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
When you look at it. And the problem is that the more skilled an attacker is, the less work they have to do as far as research goes, especially if you're attacking one specific type of vertical. Most companies within that vertical tend to act the exact same way. So you know that where one vulnerability is in one company, it's probably going to be in another. And that's why you tend to have attackers that concentrate on that one specific type of vertical or that one specific type of crime. They get used to it and they become masters in their craft at that. And they don't have to put a lot of work into it after that point.
And do you think there's value in doing these, pen testing, social engineering exercises, these phishing training attempts on the employee population? What's your take on that?
I would say it depends on. I think there is value, but I think it has to be done properly. There's a difference between training for compliance and training for effectiveness. I gave a presentation for Physicians Mutual.
Brad, that's profound. What you just said.
I mean, there is though, right?
No, I'm serious. That's profound, and you just tell it like it is. Say that again. Say that again.
There's a difference between training for compliance and training for effectiveness. I don't. A criminal doesn't give a damn about GDPR, HIPAA, anything else like that. He doesn't care.
Hold on, no.
Everything.
Are you serious? They don't care about GDPR? I thought they have GDPR forms. No,
they're looking at how can we use GDPR to benefit ourselves is what they're asking themselves. That's about it. But you think about that. It's what does training for compliance do? Yes, it lays a base level. And at the end of the day, if you are attacked, at least you can say, well, we did something. That's about it. All right. But that doesn't mean you don't train for compliance. I'm not trying to say that. But I am saying train for effectiveness as well. When I worked with a Fortune 50 company, we sent out we did a phishing simulation and sent out an email. Email said we've added 2 more days of vacation time to the calendar. Didn't say what the days were. Instead, at the bottom, we had a PDF marked calendar. Question was, how many people will click on it? Answer was, everyone clicked on it.
Who doesn't want to get 2 more days of vacation?
So,
my God, even if you did it with 1 day of vacation, I'm sure everybody would click on it.
But here's the issue with that. The people who clicked on it, they got upset. They got mad. They started to complain. This company, this Fortune 50 company, what do? They apologize. We're sorry. We're not going to do this again. We were mistaken. We promised not to do this again.
And
whoa.
And hold on, everybody who clicked on it gets those 2 extra days.
Exactly. Everybody, we'll give you those 2 extra days anyway. So, sorry to get your hopes up. We'll follow through with it. But that's, when you say you're not going to train like that, that's the way a criminal's going to attack you. And your employees, your company needs to know what those attacks look like. A lot of companies have this incident response plan, an actual physical book on a shelf someplace. they never take the book off the shelf until they're hit. They never run the scenarios, anything else like that. Then the book comes off the shelf and they're trying to figure things out. And a lot of the stuff that's in the book doesn't need to be there. A lot of stuff that's not in the book needs to be there. So you need to run those scenarios, find out what that looks like, what you need to do, test everything. Ransomware, for example. I've talked to companies. You talk to a company that gets hit with ransomware, and they've got their backups in place. The backups are being reinstalled and all that. And about 3 days into it, they figure out, well, we've got 49 petabytes of data over that copper line. It's going to take about 69 years to reinstall because they've never tested that stuff. So it's like, okay, all right. Or, they've got their backups in the cloud ready to go, but the tool to install the backups is encrypted on the systems with the rest of the ransomware.
No way.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Are
yeah.
you serious? So that actually happened. It makes the whole backup completely ineffective.
The lesson to learn is run the scenarios. Train for effectiveness and compliance.
It reminds me of a documentary I watched yesterday about the Titanic's sinking. So what happened is the reason why they couldn't see the iceberg is because they didn't have any binoculars. Because what happened is they fired the first officer who had the key to where all the binoculars were locked in. So they have about 20 of these on board. But the person got fired. He got off this boat, and then 3 days into the voyage in the ocean, they figure out, oh, hold on, we don't have any binoculars because they're all under locked. There's a locked door, and no one has the key. So it's almost identical, and they didn't test like any of it. And then we know what happened.
Right. And I think that's what you have to do. And it's training, it's understanding your place in that cybercrime environment. A lot of companies, and this as well as I do, a lot of companies, they don't want to put the money into proper cybersecurity, and they don't worry about it until they're hit. When they're hit, they're wanting to do everything right at that point. And that's the wrong approach to take. You have to realize it's not a question of if, it's always going to be a question of when. When are we going to be attacked? That's coming. The reason you've not been hit yet, first of all, you probably have been. You just don't know it. And if you've not been, it's basically the worst lottery in the world. There's just not enough criminals yet to get to you. But they're coming. I promise you, they are coming. So understand your place in that cybercrime spectrum, how a criminal will attack you. If it's does your company have data that a criminal can lock down and hold for ransom? Does it have data that can be stolen and repurposed and resold on the dark web or what have you? These days, you're seeing that criminals are doing both. They're locking down the data and stealing it at the same time.
Yeah, but the reason why ransomware was so successful is criminals figure out that the data is most valuable to you.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily to someone else.
And there's a reason that criminals are hitting things like hospitals or oil pipelines. That having patients on a table or on ventilators and you get locked down, that's one hell of a motivator to get you to discuss ransom. It truly is.
Very true.
That's not going away. That is not going away. The more you go on with this, when you look at why criminals commit crime online, it's willingness, it's ego, and then it's knowledge. All right. So what are you willing to do as a criminal? That threshold continues to sink lower and lower as the years go by. You used to have a group of criminals that would never target a healthcare system because you don't want to cost lives at the end of the day. That's going out the window right now. You are targeting hospitals.
It's interesting. Why do you think that is? Why are we degrading why the criminals are degrading their kind of the moral standards, if they call it like that?
I think it's that slippery slope. When I was committing crime, the big thing when I was committing crime was people would say, well, at least we're not stealing from individuals. That's the bottom dwellers that are stealing from individuals. But as more criminals come in, I think it becomes that slippery slope all of a sudden. Well, yeah, individuals, but the bank covers them. Then you keep going down and down from there. Well, ransomware, then you justify it. Well, the hospital should have had the proper security in place. They should have had backups. It's not my fault. They have the money to pay the ransom, so it's their fault if anyone dies. I think that's the point. I spoke to a law enforcement official a few weeks ago. I was having lunch with him, and we got to talk about drugs. Fentanyl is what we were talking about. And I think it bears mentioning this. What he was saying is is that the main suppliers of fentanyl, so the people who are selling pounds of this stuff, they don't consider the deaths to be on their hands. They're just a supplier, is the only thing they are. They think that the people who are street level that are selling the drugs and it's killing these individuals, they think that those are the people who are responsible. The
That is
actual main
incredible.
sellers, they don't consider that their
That's
problem at
that's
all.
like, yeah, that's incredible. That's a justification of, I
Yeah,
guess. But you can come out with anything. I mean,
absolutely.
this type of reasoning, if you call
And
it
that's
like
what it
that,
is. I mean, you have to realize that most of these criminals are not sociopaths. It's all about justifying that crime. Well, the company should have had security in place, or the company can't afford it. If someone dies, it's the company's fault because they've got the money to pay that. It's not my fault. I think that's the problem right there.
That's absolutely incredible. Brett, we should do this again. I feel like
I
we're just
agree.
scratching the surface with like some of these topics, and we should just take a couple like recent incident and dissect those, and maybe go
I mean,
like
this
through.
is a good show right here. I
Yeah,
feel like
I
it's
love that.
good show.
I love it, Brett. You're just a wealth of knowledge, and like it's just incredible. What's the best way? So we'll do that. We'll schedule another one.
Sure.
What is the best way for people to reach out to you? If they want consulting, or they want for you to come over and speak, and highly recommend. I mean, I've seen you in person, and this medium does not do it justice. You're like, seriously, like you're amazing in person as well as online.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, if you want to contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Brett Johnson. My website is anglerfish.com. That's ANGLERPHISH. P as in Paul, HISH. Anglerfish.com. Reach out to me. Here's the deal, guys. I do a lot of free stuff. Of course, I like to make money too, as anybody does. I got to eat. But, if you're an individual that's needing help, anything else like that, if you're law enforcement, don't hesitate to reach out. I mean that. If you're a company, I've got something I can do for you. I believe you me, I've got something I can do for you. We'll talk. So don't feel free to reach out. We'll have a discussion. We'll go from there. If I can help any way I can, I certainly will. If I can't help, I'll be more than honest with you and tell you that there's nothing I can do for you.
Super, Brett. This has been amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for everyone for joining. Looking forward to seeing you next time, and stay safe out there.